When it comes to lentils, they're not only high in fiber and loaded with minerals, they also have been shown to protect the heart, the bones, and the digestive system. As you can see, dish by dish as we move on, lentils are looking better and better and better, don't you think? So now we're going to take lentils and turn them into sort of a salad. You can also whip this into a pate, and we're going to spread it over whole grain bread. It's very sort of Italian style. It's called a crostini. And crostini means hard and crusty, so the bread is going to be hard and crusty. So I'm going to take a whole grain loaf of bread. And for some reason in cooking, you do things in threes. So I'm going to cut 3 pieces of bread. You may cut more if you have a bigger crowd, but 3 is the lucky number in cooking. So we're going to take these 3 slices of bread and then get some extra virgin olive oil and drizzle it over each piece of bread on the first side, right? And then just take a brush and make sure that the oil is kind of evenly spread on the bread. And what this is going to help the bread to do is get crunchy and golden brown, but also retain like a richness. You could just toast it, but then the bread's just dry. This way, it'll retain a little bit of its moisture so that the flavor is a bit richer. Some people also rub garlic on the bread at this point, but I'm going to be using garlic in the sauté, so I didn't want to garlic us out. Now we'll take a little bit of extra virgin olive oil in our griddle pan, and using a brush, just brush it along the surface so that the surface of the pan is covered, just a little bit shiny with oil. You don't want a pile of oil here or the bread will just get oily. So then you turn on the flame pretty high. And we're just going to lay our 3 pieces of bread in the pan, okay? Then we'll come back here and get our veggies ready. Remember, as I always tell you, clean your work area in between, because if you leave it all sort of chaotic, you get really overwhelmed with your cooking and suddenly you just don't want to play anymore. So we'll take a little bit of extra virgin olive oil into a skillet for our sauté. And then we'll take some red onion. You may use shallots, yellow onion, it doesn't matter. You can use leeks. I really like red onion because it's high in magnesium, which helps to settle your nerves, and some garlic. And then we turn on the heat. This serves 2 purposes. 1, I get the flavor of my extra virgin olive oil at the final bite of my dish. But the other thing that it does is it helps to prevent you from burning the garlic. And that's a terrible flavor. So let's try not to do that, shall we? A little bit of salt to let the sizzle build. And then as this is starting to sweat, you can hear the bread sort of crackling around on the griddle pan. You can check it, but don't get carried away turning it too quickly. Let it brown. You want to get nice golden edges, so be patient with your bread. And so now that this has begun to build and you get a nice sizzle happening, then we add carrots. And this is sort of like a basic, in French cooking it's called a mirepoix. In Italian or Latin cooking it's called a sofrito, and it's onions, garlic, celery, carrot. And then you may add whatever you want to it. But now you have a nice sizzle and you just want to saute until the carrots are shiny with oil. You want a nice texture here. The lentils are soft, so you want your veggies to be a little bit crunchy. If you're going to puree this into a smooth pate, I puree the lentils and then I still put the veggies in crunchy so that it'll always have a little bit of texture. Now we'll take some celery, maybe half a stalk. We don't need much. Cut it into spears, dice it, and pop it into the pan. With a final seasoning of salt. Now, you'll kind of freak out when you see me add the salt, but I'm salting this sauté to also be the seasoning in the lentils. So I'm going to add a good amount of salt. Settle down. I can hear you breathing heavily at home when you see me using salt. It's good for you. Keep your muscles tight, vessels strong. Use good quality sea salt only in cooking, never at the table. The most important thing in cooking is to learn how to season, right? If you get your food to the table and it's flat, tough. Learn how to season. You don't get to do this at the table. That's when you get into trouble with hypertension and all the things that we associate with salt. See how the bread got golden? Try not to burn it. You just want the edges golden like this, really pretty. So now we'll take our veg and add them into our bowl of lentils. These are called le puy if you're French, Umbrian if you're Italian, and beluga if you're, I guess, Russian. Anyway, they're little tiny lentils, and they don't get really, really mushy. Even if you cook them a long time, they'll always retain a little bit of their shape. If you want this to become a pate without a food processor, then use bigger lentils and they'll get creamy on their own. But since I want texture here, we're going to go with it this way. So we're going to take our veg, stir it in. I wish you guys could smell this. I think there's nothing quite as heavenly as garlic and onion. And then we're going to stir into this some whole fresh basil leaves, just until they wilt. And it'll give it just that little aromatic summer flavor. And they'll wilt down and be perfection. Then we'll take our bread onto a finished plate. This is such a nice dish, and it's such a great way to get people to eat beans if they're not so inclined. Then you take some of your lentil salad, warm lentil salad, and let it fall off the bread. Just kind of pile it high on here. This is a very sort of homey, rustic sort of dish. And then we're going to garnish each one with red bell pepper, roasted pepper, of course, so that we balance it for digestion. And a final drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. And a few basil leaves for a little bit of green color. And there you have a perfect starter course or light side dish that's high in protein, rich in complex carbohydrates, and loaded with nutrients.